To the Ballinasloe Comic-Con. My name's Bolger, and I'm going to have a little chat here about some stuff to do with comics. So my two guests here, I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. On my right here.
My name is Gavin Fullerton. I'm a comic book and storyboard artist. I've worked in animation for a good few years, and then I kind of pivoted to comics. I mainly make horror comics. My books include Bags, or a Story Thereof, which is an adaptation of Patrick McHale's short story. And then my second book is Bog Bodies. It's written by Declan Shelby. Yeah, I think that's about it, really.
Yeah, my name is Coireall Kent. I'm 21 and I started making comics at 17. I'm an animator and comic creator, and I'm pursuing a degree in animation and motion design at Limerick School of Art and Design in Limerick. My most recent work has been a collaboration between Brazilian and Irish comic creators called Op Art, Out of Place Artifacts. Marco the Demon Dude, published by Livewire Comics, and a recent comic anthology piece called All Right City, which is going to be published in the Slovakian anthology End of the World, which is being published by Royal Dirties. And I run the weekly webcomic Bolger, which is a speculative science fiction mess, essentially. Yeah.
And I'll just tell you a little bit about me. I've been at this a bit longer than the lads, for a few years on. When I was in college in the 80s, so it's a long time ago, and I did a bunch of independent comics. There was a kind of an early movement of underground comics around the world back then, before any digital stuff happened. We were posting stuff to each other all the time. So I was always into comics as a kid, and I tried that, but I got into animation. And I ended up working for Don Bluth and Richard Williams and Ralph Bakshi and all these sort of well-known animation directors. Land Before Time, All Dogs Go to Heaven, Cool World. And in recent years, I've done too much to mention here. It's crazy because I'm just older than you guys. but I'm like yourself. I do storyboards and animation, and I work a lot with Hardman and people like that. And my recent thing in comics is a cool comic called Hound, which will be out next year, Dark Horse. We published it a few years ago in 3 kind of cool volumes that we really put our biggest efforts we could into making these hardback things, and it got picked up, which is great. So I've been across the spectrum. So like you guys, I'm a geek as well.
I feel like I'm among royalty here.
Yeah, we're trying to make a living off drawing funny pictures. So okay, so I have a list of questions. I'm just going to go through them. So let's just start with yourself.
Sure, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your love of comics and illustration. I mean, where did it come from? Were you doing it from day one, or did you get into it when you were older, let's say?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, like, you know, just sort of just that flair for drawing as a kid, you know, just showed a bit of talent with it, like, and just luckily I just kind of got the encouragement, you know, but in Donegal and kind of Ireland in general, comics they're just not really in the culture, you know.
It's starting to be.
Oh, definitely, yeah, big time, which is really great to see, like. But yeah, when I was a kid, like, you know, just like really limited access to comics, you know. But when I was in primary school, they got in like a bunch of like graphic novel adaptations of like classic literary stories, like so. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Frankenstein was just like, you know, just blew my mind, you know.
Yeah.
And
a few of those.
yeah. That was fantastic, like, and yeah, just I think that kind of really kind of sparked my kind of love of the actual medium itself. And then I guess just generally being a nerd, as you say, and just like,
you're a fan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be kind of the same. I don't know, I mean, I look back at my older drawings, I think they're shite, but sorry, they're not great. But I don't know, it seemed to get noticed by adults in my life, and they'd keep encouraging. And it was kind of more so in secondary school where I started to think, okay, you know, maybe this is something I actually could do in terms of actually doing comics, because I think I was in TY, I was doing a good bit of like my own personal kind of comic work, but in 5th year, my English teacher from TY actually recommended that I'd attend a TY workshop on comic creation. I think it was being held by Fiona Bonnywell. I'm not sure if you know her. Yeah, Death's New Lease on Life and everything. I mean, she's fantastic. And she was holding a workshop in my local library in Mitchelstown, so I got involved in that, and the rest is kind of history. She invited me to work at volunteer at the Core Comic Creators and get involved with everyone in there.
It is interesting, you know, listening to you, like, because I've been a bit older, I can remember being into comics, a couple of mates. We all had the same story, but we grew up in slightly different cultures. We're like, there's like 3 generations sitting here in a way. Comics, you know.
For sure,
we're in a culture where it's totally acceptable now.
Oh yeah.
And there's even college courses.
Yeah.
And I was even part of some of my films are being studied. My scenes from my in Valley Farm and other places. So.
Even one of my lecturers, I think he worked in Emerald City, and he raves about Don Bluth. Like
So like, but back then that was the first incursion of where it was almost acceptable. Like when you went to school, I remember being in secondary school in Waterford. I'm from Waterford, and our teacher was brilliant. You know, and I give her the credit really. You know, to like yourselves. But what was interesting was there was no real culture of it. Get a job was the thing. Now I know it's in a way, but not as much. You know, which is kind of cool. So I think anybody wants to get into comics, if you have any kind of flair, and comics are so. I saw a tweet this morning or the other day, where somebody said, all films are being made based on comic book characters. Are we all children now? And I'm going, hang on a minute here. This is somebody who doesn't read comics. Doesn't have a clue, right? And there are like films, you know, there are all sort of genres and all sorts of styles. Everything from the abstract through to the most weirdest horror to whatever you want. It's kind of wide open now, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Especially genre-wise, I mean, you see like autobiography coming in and everything. I know that's from the 90s or whatever but like still very recent.
But like, let's say, do you know who Will Eisner is?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Will Eisner stuff, right? I mean, some of his comics that he did in the late 70s. I mean, the man gave up comics and came back to it in his 60s. It's amazing. So you can start at any time, really. You don't have to be in school. You can be retired and start making comics.
Oh, absolutely.
And the great thing about having worked in film, I have to say, and see if you agree, comics are much more free.
Yeah, they're definitely much more accessible. I mean, if you have a pen and a piece of paper, you're a comic artist, you know.
You know, are you going to tell stories with words or pictures or both?
Yeah.
I always find, I don't know if it's just because I prefer to make comics personally, but I always find it's more intuitive. Like the actual creation process as opposed to having a very disciplined storyboard you have to work from.
You don't have a committee telling you what to do.
Yeah, true.
You don't have a bunch of bosses telling you what to do.
Or even teammates. Just work solo.
Yeah, it's good. When they have teammates, it's good to try it out and see how it goes. So, well, you kind of covered. I was going to ask what was the scene. Well, actually, when you got into it, let's say when you did, I heard you said you worked on that Bog Bodies is yours.
Yeah.
Really cool, right? That's a great book, by the way.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah,
so, but getting into it, like, I'm going to mix up 2 questions. When you got into it and you stopped doing it for fun, you tried to do it for real, let's say. Right?
Yeah.
People you don't know to look at something you've done. How did that happen? Like, how did you meet Declan or one you've done? How did you get picked up? Like, what did you say, Slovakian or Slovenian?
Oh yeah, I think that was through a competition, but yeah.
Well, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm at Dec. Like, I was working on animation, you know, in Dublin, and
Where did you work?
Giant at the time, Giant Animation, yeah. And Dec was doing like a comics course, like a 6-week thing, you know. And I just went along to that, and like I made my own wee comic in that time, like, you know, and showed it to Dec, and he really loved it, you know, and again, just like really encouraging, and just kept in touch.
Yeah, he's really hero, he's brilliant.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the great thing with Dec, like, he's just so encouraging, and just, he's always bringing in, like, you know, young people, and
even first year when I was talking to my lecturers about being interested in comics, they went, "Oh, Declan, you know, okay, he did print, but still, like, had, you know, excuse the pun, but a giant in."
Totally, like, you know, and that's like, I think you kind of need people like that, like, you know, to.
Do you know, they often say like all it takes is one person. It could be that they're in a position to hire you, or just give you a bit of inspiration, or whatever the hell it is, or a bit of moral support, or
for sure,
whatever you need. You know, just it can be scary sometimes to think, you know, what am I going to do with this blank page? How do you even start? I remember we bought when I was about 14. That how to draw your comics and Marvel.
Oh yeah.
When I was 14.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, myself and my mate, who's a fine artist now, he bought that, and we just sat there like in his bedroom and trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
How the hell can you do hands? Oh wait, no, it's a box with 5 sausages.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is like a language. You start to learn a language.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's such a great book as well. Like, and it definitely get become smart away. Absolutely, yeah, because it really does. It's such a great introduction to basic drawing and storytelling, you know.
And also the mechanics. Even if you want to work on paper with pen, like I do a lot of stuff digitally.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
If you're working with pen and paper, it even shows you how to set up a desk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of research is staple today, kind of. Yeah.
Like, what I find interesting when parents ask me what I teach children, like I'm always reluctant because it can be disheartening for certain kids of certain age, especially under 12, you know, because the gear that's involved, the time that it takes, you really have to want to do it. And if you want to do it, it doesn't matter how good or bad the drawing is, right? It's just wanting to do it.
For sure, yeah. Well, that was something that kind of held me back a lot as a kid as well, because I was, you know, mainly looking at like professional level comics, you know. I was just like, oh, I can't draw this, you know. And anytime I tried to, it was just like discouraged, you know. Yeah. When really you just need to kind of just sit down and
just do it.
Yeah, even if it's with stick figures or whatever, just try.
I even had that for a long time, even when I was in secondary, just starting off. But it was when I kind of worked. It wasn't an employment kind of situation, but it was kind of, I call it an internship. I was working on a project with Colin O'Mahony and Charlie Abbo, and he essentially just put my pages that I was supplying to him through so many revisions that I basically got like a crash course education in making comics, and kind of from then on I thought, okay, I know the path to take.
It's even how thick a pen should I use for drawing those frames? What size should the text be?
Yeah.
Because I hadn't a clue when I started 22 years ago as well, and you draw, you hear that you should draw an A3, for example. Right?
Yeah.
And then it's going to be reduced to whatever size. And then, but if you make the lettering too big,
yeah.
And then when the thing's reduced, you see nothing but words.
Yeah.
And you're not even reading them. They're just big E's and R's. You can't even read them.
Yeah.
So simple stuff like that. The logistics of it. What are you working on at the moment?
I can't actually say.
Is it a book? Is it a comic?
Yeah, it's a
series. Or?
Yeah, it's a graphic novel it's going to be released online in 3 parts at the start, and then we're going to collect it in print. And it's a horror story. That's about as much as I can say, unfortunately, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of caught up with studies a lot at the moment, but
What do you plan to do?
Hopefully, when I get a bit more time, I'll keep on stocking up the buffer for Bolger and see how it goes from there. But I'm always keeping an eye out for kind of projects, and I have an inbox ready for kind of any emails to come in, and I kind of just latch onto them, to be honest, yeah.
So what would you say is the difference if you have worked with a bigger publishing house versus an indie publisher, or even doing your own publishing, self-publishing? What would you say would be, like, is it tougher to do your own thing and try and print it? Have you worked with a bigger publisher who kind of takes over all that and runs it, or an indie publisher where you share a job?
Yeah, I mean, it really, it's sort of a different experience every time, you know. That's sort of the unfortunate thing about it. There's no set template of here, this is how this is going to go, you know, because I've worked with big publishers, you know, and there's a lot of support there, but I felt in some ways they kind of didn't advertise the book as much as I would have wanted, and then there's like a sort of creative control. You have to kind of run things up the ladder and get things approved.
Things have to be kind of potentially palatable at a kind of a mainstream scale, I guess, kind of.
Yeah.
I suppose the bigger publishers are all focused on sales because it costs so much to produce these things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thinking, well, it's like film, like animation.
Yeah.
Most cartoons are still made for little kids because they sell for little kids. So to make an independent animated feature series that's a bit quirky or hard, it's tough.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely a benefit of the indie scene, though. I think even if you're working in a team, like, it can be still a bit kind of a compromise. But I find it's always kind of a joy just bringing like a writer's vision to life like that, because you know it's going to be wacky if it's indie. I suppose even more so than when you're working on your own. It's for you in a way, I guess. So you just go nuts with it.
Well, if you're it depends on what your role is as well. I mean, if you're working with a writer, no matter whether it's indie or whether it's for a big publisher, that relationship can be, I mean, is it a collaboration or are you kind of working for them? Yeah, exactly. You just like the sort of, just this drawing machine to, you know,
just use them carefully.
So it really does just, you know, I think each has their own.
So there's no set.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It really is different.
So when people talk, it does make me think sometimes, particularly in Ireland, you hear the word comics industry. There is no industry.
No, yeah.
Industry means you show up to work every day.
Yeah,
It's kind of more of a community, I guess.
Yeah,
Kind of
and I think everybody does their own thing their own way. I mean, they work to the demands of the project or the publisher, or if it's your own thing, whatever. But like say the animation industry, when I got into it in Ireland, in that Don Bluth place, that was the first time there was that was a factory. And it was great, I learned a lot there, and there was another Carrie Wolf doing the turtles. I never worked really for them, but all my mates were up there because that was a madhouse. It was great. Bluth was a bit odd, you know. It was a bit like going to church and a bit kind of do what the priest says. You know? Kind of have to follow the rules, but they really taught you brilliant stuff. So it's that thing of if there's an industry, like if you work, I've never worked for Marvel or DC, speaking about them, but I used to hear anyway, or I read up on it, and there's a lot of Irish lads and girls working for them now, but that is a system, isn't it? Penciler, inker, etc. It's very subdivided.
Yeah, and I think when you have that kind of thing, it can...
And you have to have it, don't you? To that many books.
But I think it can kind of, the process can feel quite disjointed in that way. Like, I mean, the inker could have a very particular idea of how they want to ink your piece.
It's like working for Disney, I guess. When you work in that studio, you work to the house style. You know, and that's the choice you make. That's before we started, I mentioned that about being a gun for hire or being your own artist, being a creator. It's very different than being a gun for hire.
It's definitely a strange system, because I mean, kind of what sells your art is you know, in terms of like people like love this particular artist for their style and their exactly.
We love what you did because you made it more like that.
There's this weird dichotomy, you know, but certainly, you know, as someone who's worked in animation for a good few years, like the reason I pivoted to comics is to get away from that factory. Like you got you gotta follow this pipeline essentially, you know. Whereas in comics, even I mean, I've worked in mainly kind of indie books and things, so kind of things are done under my own steam. But I still think there's more freedom, you know.
But even through kind of my few years of education, I've realized sometimes it's even less about the work and more so how you can communicate about it. I find, you know, not to use cold language, but like, can you sell your work in a way? Can you speak about it in a way that really excites people? Because I found like I wouldn't be the strongest drawer, but I always find if I can have this idea and I can try and convey to people the excitement around it, it seems kind of work as
That's such an essential skill that I don't have.
I mean, likewise.
It's hard to do. I kind of let the work speak for itself, which is not a great thing really, because people get to see it to allow it to speak for itself. So you do have to do what you said, advertise it or sell it. Do you do much? We're kind of covering, we're kind of going around, but have you done much for other people? Like, have you been a gun for hire? Apart from animation, I mean, in the comics world.
Personally, like, I mean, I've done like covers and stuff, you know, which is much more a gun for hire kind of a.
Here's a commission, here's a brief, here's what I want. And you know, will you illustrate this cover for me? Will you do a few pages?
Exactly.
You've done that. Have you?
To be honest, I've been taking a very kind of organic approach to it, where I haven't really gotten much paid work yet. But I suppose I'm trying to get as saturated into the community as possible, and then extend my tendrils, I think. It'll come,
Okay. And how have things changed since you got involved first? I mean, have you noticed a shift from when you first said, I want to do, like, I don't mean from being a little kid trying to copy comics, but I mean from the day when you said, okay, this is for real, I'm going to give it a go, I'm going to draw this thing, tell my story, or illustrate this or her story. Since the day you started, has it changed much? Have you noticed a change, and has COVID gotten in the way, or how?
Yeah, I mean, definitely with COVID, like I said, the book I'm working on now, we're releasing digitally, and there's much more of a push towards that these days. Like, and COVID, whenever COVID hit, like the comics industry is essentially run by Diamond, which is the distributor, and you have to go through them if you want to get your book published in comic book stores, essentially, you know. And whenever COVID hit, they essentially collapsed, and it was just a real mess, you know. And so I think there's much more talk about how do we, you know, get these things out there, how do we distribute these things, you know, different avenues, online, getting them into bookstores, you know. So I think there's much more discussion and talk about.
The things that have changed, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
And even with the likes of Dime, and you have your own book, is it tough to get them to take it on? And do they take a massive percentage? Or?
Yeah, they take like a percentage of the sales and stuff, you know.
So you have to bring it finished. They don't, like, they're not a people who back a comic, they're not a publisher.
No.
They're a distributor, so you have to arrive with the actual printed product in a box and say, take.
Yeah. And they take a cut, and I mean the industry has a lot of issues, like every industry has, you know. But I think
the last couple of years have been mad anyway with COVID. Right?
Yeah. Well, I think if you know the one benefit of COVID is like it really got people to stop and think like, right, how do we?
Yeah, and I found that there are more opportunities in general since COVID started. I found even in terms of actual offers I was getting and things, I suppose people were bored, you know, so they'd you know drop into your inbox saying, look, we're doing something, and just get involved if you want to. And I mean, how could you say no if you were in your room all day, kind of?
But you know, it's funny. What I've noticed, to me anyway, is how working at home is like, yeah, right, you're in your pajamas all day. And now it's acceptable for everyone in life, except maybe guys who have to go build houses or, you know, have to be on in a factory floor. But most people who work in an office setup, even teachers, can teach from home. You know, suit up to here.
Yeah.
You know, wear what you want down below. But it's a kind of a thing where working at home, which we all do by default, if you want to be an illustrator or comic book artist, that's what you do anyway.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the geeks have won.
We've taken over.
I remember listening to, I think was it Kevin Keane talking at, I'm not sure which Comic-Con it was, but he was just mentioning how it's like a lonely job. But I think every job is kind of a lonely job now at this point, you know.
For me, I don't know. I like them, you know, anyway. But I think it's a job you do alone. I don't know if we're lonely because, well, I can't speak for you guys, but before the digital world, everything was done in the old way, like post. I was doing clearing up there recently in the studio, and I found comics from a girl that I was writing in Japan in '85.
Wow.
Who was posting me her indie comics, and the quality of them. I look at the print, still have them. Shoot K or something it was called. And there was this, like I was saying earlier, there was this group in England through Escape magazine. Paul Gravitt, I think, is the guy's name. He now works as a journalist now. But there was kind of community, but it was all done by snail mail. Because we couldn't be in touch any other way. But still, it was the same thing, it was just a slightly different way of communicating, whereas now it's really instantaneous. So you're not alone, you can go in your inbox, you can go on, you can contact, you can talk to, like that girl that I was writing in Japan, I never met her, I don't know where she is now. No, nothing, but if it was today, I could be on the Zoom.
For sure, yeah.
And we'd be chatting about, you know, it is a job I think you do alone, and I think that, yeah, it can be odd at times.
But it's
I think you have to.
Sorry, go over. You over. It's okay.
I was just going to say, like, I think you have to, like, you definitely have to make the effort to connect with people. You know, it's very easy to just
have your corner of the internet.
And just like, just you know, be alone. You know, you definitely have to, you know, like back in the 80s, you had to make the effort to. You know, go to the post office and post that stuff, and it's very much the same now. You have to make the effort to reach out to people.
I remember going on the ferry to England to the Escape office with my pages, and he said, "I'm not really lovely. I want the fair play to you for coming over." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm going to the Virgin Mega store."
You'd be talking about like sharing zines and everything. I think that's become the webcomic scene.
Yes,
I think, you know, like it's very much so a kind of a long tail.
There was punk fanzines.
Exactly.
I used to do a lot of drawings for back in the 80s when I was in college and school. And a couple of guys in Waterford used to do a couple of great these punk rock and indie rock fanzines, you know. And that was a way that comic artists could do little strips. Like we would use on-the-ball drawings of a water vice or whoever was in at the moment, you know, or those three newspaper strips, but really over the top, sicko kind of.
Yeah.
In college called Sick, S-I-K-K, just remember that was ridiculous. But that was my final year project, was to make a comic. And the college they just wouldn't. So do you know what I did? I just thought, I don't even know why I didn't bring it with me. It would have been fun to show you. But what we did was, I got all the people in the college who were interested in graphics and comics, right? They could do what they want. The only way the course would allow me to do it was if I put an article in it, some graphic design. So I had to come up with this bullshit discussion on, I can't remember what it was about, where there was a bit of graphics in it, and the rest of it was just you gotta do what you gotta do. do.
That's
But
it, yeah.
the thing has always been around. It's just
Yeah.
so much more accessible.
I think I realised very quickly when I started making Bolger. I did as my first year project, the first semester, but I realised very quick, this isn't something you really put on, Webtoon, or it wouldn't get published right off the bat because it's kind of.
That's interesting. How did the college react to you doing that? Were they open to it or not?
It was funny, I think.
Or did they not make it content?
I mean, we were very much so left to kind of square it away on our own, but I do remember one of my lecturers coming over and saying, "We love what you're doing. We love all of the work you're creating," because it was a whole bunch of interdisciplinary pieces. And he sat down and he was like, "But look, maybe less of the comics. You've done the comics for a week of your project. Move on now and do something else." So it would be a case of maybe the first half of the day I'd slap some clay together, and then for the second half of the day I'd.
So you're doing a course that you can't, that was the problem I had, because I studied graphic design and I wanted to do illustration and comics, and I had to often do soft bottle labels.
Yeah.
You just have to do them, you have to.
I mean, you bring your own kind of flair to it, but at the same point it has to be marketable.
Yeah.
But I found
But it's but at the plus side of it is that anybody who is interested and want to get into it, and you are facing into, let's say you're coming out of secondary school, right, and you're going to college, and you're living in a situation where you can't afford to go to Dublin or Cork or Galway or wherever, and you're going to have to stay in your hometown like I did. I had to go to college in Waterford because we couldn't afford to go to. I didn't even bother applying to the NCAD or anything because we could afford it. So but my attitude was, well, I'm going to have access to a desk, I'm going to have access to a repro camera, and I'm going to have access to clay and paint, and people who know about this stuff. Okay, fuck it, it's not 100% what I want, but it's better than what I have now, which
For sure, yeah.
cardboard box or something.
Yeah.
So it's what you can do with it, I think, is what's important.
Oh, completely. It's you're learning how to talk about your work and kind of that element of,
And the thing is, your mates and your people in your classroom are going to be usually quite supportive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Did you study, did you go to college?
I did animation in Ballyfermot,
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
I taught it there too. In the 90s. I taught them deliberately in the 90s.
Oh,
I was only barely out of the whole blue thing myself. But what did you make of that? How long ago was that?
I graduated in 2014, I think.
So you were working, would you have done a lot of, was it still on paper in a certain part where
Yeah.
And then you moved through, not to get away from comics, but it's just interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And would you have had an opportunity, say like you said you did boarding?
Yeah.
Very like comics. Different, because it's timeline.
Yeah.
But the tools are the same.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. No, I mean, definitely there's so much overlap between, animation, it's all visual storytelling, really, fundamentally, at the end of the day, But yeah, I mean, like Ballyfermot was great in so many ways, in that, it had a great, ties to the industry, it really, give you access to animators and...
Yeah, I think a lot of the guys who work in comics now come study animation.
Yeah, I think a few, yeah. Yeah, I think.
And even Declan, did he do comics?
I think he did print. He would have done print, I'd say.
Yeah. I think Deck did fine art, in Limerick, I think as well. Yeah.
I have a feeling it was print, but I'd say I trust you more.
I'm not too sure, but yeah, it's.
But you're right, it is a big crossover. I remember this chap in Dublin, how's his name, Killian. I can't remember his name. But when I was teaching at Limerick back in the early 90s, he was doing graphic design, but he wanted to make short films, so he would come in on his own accord.
Yeah.
He ended up working for Dark Horse, I think, doing comics and stuff. But he had done animation, but he wanted to go into illustration. So I guess if you go into a course or you're going to study something, it can go.
Yeah, that's it. It's definitely, you're definitely not here's your path and you got to stick to that.
Exactly.
That's the point I'm trying to make. That if you decide you want to do visual, whatever that is, well, if you do fine art, that's a given course. You're going down a particular road. But if you come into something like illustration, comics, or animation, there's a lot of movement in there.
Absolutely, Even within animation, you got so many different specialities. I mean, are you doing backgrounds? Exactly. Are you doing, now with 3D animation, are you doing character rigging? Which is something I have absolutely no idea about. But we did some 3D modeling, which you know, which I've used to help me make my comics. You know, like to build like a little set and you know, like use for reference. You know,
really help if you're doing sort of more realistic stuff.
and yeah, like like the thing about animation as well, it like really makes you focus on three-dimensionality. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah. Brain. Yeah, you can see things from angles that you couldn't see before.
Yeah.
So if somebody says to you, "Oh, I want an over-the-shoulder panel or shot here," your brain just kicks in. And you kind of know what that person, the character, looks like from the back without even having...
You've done it 100 times.
But it is, it's brilliant. Just to move it on a little bit then, do you have a particular, and I think it's a good way into this, but do you have a routine? Like, what do you do? Do you write first? Do you draw first? Is it both? Like, if you're, like, what's your process?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the project, you know.
Let's say it's your project that you're writing.
Yeah.
If it's not like somebody giving you a script.
Yeah. I'm definitely like I kind of write and draw at the same time.
Yeah.
I've tried like writing a script beforehand and stuff, and it's just like.
I'm delighted to hear you say that because I thought my process was an embarrassment.
No, but I mean, but the thing is, it's totally like it's different for everybody, you know, and like you just have to find what works for you. Some artists do like write like a movie script beforehand and draw that, you know. Whereas for me, I have to draw and write at the same time, and it is very much about merging the words and the images.
Yeah, it's similar enough. Like I'd write a script, but it would just be a couple of notes in it. Yeah, very much so. And I'd thumbnail, draw it and edit it as I draw, edit the panels as I draw, and then take a good rest period of inking and colouring. That's kind of the relaxing bit. And then when I'm lettering it, I'm editing the script at the same time, which you can kind of tell from, I think, the webcomic.
I think one of my eyes, and it's very recent for me anyway, was The Watchmen. Because when the movie came out, all the books, but the comics got reprinted. I got bought, you know, originally, but there was only a kind of a sketchbook thing at the back. There wasn't a big expo how they did it. They had the script and all that, like in these special editions or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's a bigger book I think they brought out, which was like the art of the Watchmen or something. But at the back of that, I think it's at the back of that, Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons talk about how they wrote it, and there's loads of drawings by Alan Moore.
Yeah.
He was, as he was writing,
He was good too.
Yeah.
This is what I think about this, and you know. So that kind of opened my eyes to the idea, because I had written a few film scripts, and I found myself storyboarding and blocking them out because, you know, like you're saying, it's easier to do that.
Yeah.
But when I saw that kind of opened my eyes a bit. And then with the drawing of comics, when I did Hound, I did it digitally in Photoshop. I had planned to do it normally, traditionally, whatever, on paper, but the amount of black would have just killed me. I'd be still thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I would never got it done. But what was interesting was, I remember when I went to England first in the 80s, and I first saw comic art for sale in the
like the originals.
Yeah. And all this, right? And then I saw Tipex and white paint.
Yeah.
And mistakes. And I went, they don't get it right first time. So I've been throwing away pages and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was sitting in the kitchen, and the father would be going, I got you that paper, don't throw it. And I'm going, with that, I can't draw a hand.
Definitely a couple of cups of tea spilled on pages, and I've managed to edit it out.
If you don't know that, like, you think these guys are geniuses, and they are, but they also have techniques. Even Picasso made mistakes.
Yeah.
So you probably cut something out and replace it. And I remember seeing something in 2080, and it just blew my mind that he had got a bit of car, stuck it over the bad and
drew it again. Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the originals for Mouse, but he'd have bunches of masking tape over and over and over the lettering. You just think, if you can do that, you can do anything. Oh, it's fantastic. Did my narrative paper on it. So
we got into, again, talking about, I'm not just, I'm really sounding like an alpha, but when I was in college, we had kind of drifted from the Marvel stuff from DC. I was sick of it actually, but I can't stand Aegis and costumes being shit at each other and talking about it all the time. I just got so sick of it. So Warren comics grabbed our attention, all the old horror stuff, Argentinian, Italian, Hugo Pratt.
Yeah.
You know, all this stuff, even Asterix. I didn't discover Asterix until I was 20. I never knew Asterix.
Actually, same, literally, last year.
You go to France and Europe, Germany, places, and it's a big thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's in the children's book section instead of in the comic section. So that was what we got into. But the point I was going to make was just the idea of being exposed to a different way of making these books.
Yeah.
You know, a different way of trying to tell stories that you don't have to do the guys in the red capes.
Yeah.
Even in terms of like the quality of the art, like I thought everything had to be so polished. You could oil pastel the whole thing and make mistakes everywhere, and it's still fabulous, you know.
And then I think some of the styles that certainly the European guys adopted, and those Argentines, a lot of Italians and French guys, and that went to Argentina, I think, in the 50s, maybe even earlier, and then maybe they're children of immigrants, but they brought a certain tradition with them, and they just went for it. Like, is it Breccia? Honestly, anybody's interested in comics, when you look at your favourite comic stars today, check out some of those old Italian and French comics. My God, they blow your mind.
Mobius, say any more? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're just speaking. And we've covered. I was going to ask you if you work in other areas, and you do. So what? Do you ever get creative block? Do you ever get a day where I just can't do this? And how do you get out of that if you do?
I kind of go through peaks and troughs. To be honest, I could have 2 months of absolute factory work, and then 2 months of just flat out not creating. Not creating. But I'd kind of have provisions kind of made for that. So when I'm at my peak, I'd do like the things like the writing, the script, the thumbnailing, the penciling, and then the lettering, because I'm editing while I'm lettering. But for those troughs, like I'd have my inking to do, or the colouring, so I can just work autonomously or automatically at it, I guess. Throw on a podcast and kind of be kind, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very much the same. You know, it is peaks and troughs. You know, I mean, it's easier if you're drawing a book for somebody.
Yeah.
You know, because you have to get it out. Yeah, exactly, and you have your deadline, and you just have to do it. You know. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, go to bed, make a coffee.
With creative block, it's a funny one. I don't have time for creative block.
That's it. Yeah.
Just don't have time.
I think if you're making stuff under your own steam, it can definitely. You can get in your own head, like, is this worth doing? Like, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
You can get into a bit of a rut, but yeah, I think over the years, like, you just have to just move forward,
If you're doing something for somebody else, you have no choice but to get it out, like you're saying, right? So I use the downtime, if you want to call it that. That's where I get to.
It's a nicer word for it. Yeah.
So I don't have time for creative block. It's interesting. I used to when I was younger. And I always remember a teacher in college told me he was a sculpture teacher, which we didn't do, but he was a nice guy. He was coming out around the room, we had a bit of laughing. And one day I think I couldn't do something in the course, and he said, "Stop, go for a walk, get out of the room, stop looking at him, he's annoying you." Whatever.
Yeah.
And he said, if ever you hit that wall, he said, just do something normal, just get away from it. To this day, if I'm there, I'll go out, I'll kick a ball with a dog out in the yard, or I'll just go up to the field, or wherever the hell it is, up to the shop for milk, because I know we need milk. Just to get away from that thing.
I think there's also kind of an assumption that you should be able to create after that walk, but I think sometimes it can take longer as well. Like I think
what it does though is it helps your brain, I think. It just helps you. You may not find a solution right then for whatever it is, but it'll come.
Oh, your brain's working in the background.
You stick at it and carve into it. That's not always the best either, because I've never done it, but I could imagine if you were whittling on wood, if you were doing a wood turning. And you kept turning it till it was nothing but solid. That's not good either.
That's it. Like, you definitely, you just kind of have to know when to step back and know when to actually just need to grind here and just keep at it, like,
Yeah.
It's difficult to know sometimes, but, I think just kind of go through gut. And
I think even, working on other interests as well, like balancing it out with something maybe very verbal if you're doing a lot of the artwork, like if you, rather than even maybe watching a film or reading another comic, maybe reading a book full of words, I guess, would kind of be more suitable, or maybe just something that's pure audio, I think can really kind of refresh you.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what's your favourite comic book character? What's your favourite colour? No. What's your favourite comic book character? Pick three, you don't have to pick one.
Oh God, I really have no idea.
Okay, do it a different way. What's your favourite superhero?
I would actually say Hellboy. I think it's pretty.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I was going to see either Hellboy or does Sandman count though?
Hellboy's close second.
Yeah, I think Sandman does count.
Oh yeah, I don't know if he counts as a superhero, but pretty good.
Definitely.
Pretty good. Yeah.
I mean, Hellboy's such just a huge fan of Mike Mignola, in his art, like. But Hellboy's such a. I think it's such a great for people that aren't really into superheroes. It's a great one to give people, like,
Yeah, even talking about Mobius, I was watching a documentary about him, and they had Mike Mignola on it, and he was saying, like, he didn't know why Mobius was so obsessed with American comics. He was there like, oh, he's got this great tradition around him and he draws so differently, you know. He wanted to draw like these French cartoonists.
Do you know where Japanese anime came from?
This was the Ukiyo Prince?
Oh, they have the big eyes.
No.
It's interesting. World War II, Japan was occupied after the war, right? And their culture was kind of looked down on because they were defeated, I think. This is what I heard, read anyway. And there was a shift with Japanese kids, I think, at that time were seeing a lot of American stuff. Because the American army was there, they would have the food and whatever they were trying to bring in. And came back, as we know, Americans went away. But the point is, when it came to comics, they were trying to draw like Americans.
Right, like Disney style, big eyes.
Look at the history we have.
Yeah.
Plus the comics we did.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Prints.
Yep.
But that was probably because of their defeat and everything, the way they looked at themselves at that period. For a younger generation coming up, drawing comics, and the big eyes, I don't know if it's right, was them literally drawing what they saw as Western eyes.
Wow.
And they pushed it further. And it developed into its own thing, obviously, as we all know. I mean, you've got many styles of anime, have, you know, manga, it's all a million different styles. I mean, you have comics about guys playing golf over there.
Yeah.
But it was a kind of a thing where they were trying to, they were literally like most hit what they liked. It was their version of what they liked, and it became their own thing.
I think it's such a shame as well that, I mean, aspiring artists who are drawing in the anime manga style, they get a lot of, you know, from maybe art teachers or whatever, they can get a lot of flack for it. But I think it's just a stepping stone. Like, it's not maybe something to rely on too heavily, but if it's...
You know, it's like, you know, if you draw like Picasso, who decided not to draw anymore, arguably, right? And then that's praised. Teachers don't listen to art teachers, they're not, you know.
Controversial.
My experience of art college is they didn't want us to draw. Actually.
Point blank, just nothing. Oh, just your kind of conceptual kind of...
When I went to the fine art, it became more, back in the 80s, it was all about performance art.
Oh, yeah.
So they were trying to push people into that and, you know, putting grass in shopping carts and stuff. And we were going, I wanted...
That was the really good thing about Ballyfermot, is that it had a great, like, foundational drawing, you know, emphasis on foundational drawing skills.
Of course, there's a graphics art geared still towards drawing.
Exactly.
Although I do find with my particular course that I chose, because I think there's two different animation courses you can do, and one of them in Clonmel is far more kind of industry based, whereas the one I'm in is kind of more artsy fartsy. So you could be working with sand, or you could be working with...
Well, it's interesting that you talk about that difference in the two, because like I said, I taught Dunleary and Ballyfermot. Ballyfermot was more industry focused. At the time, I think Dunleary is a bit more now, but back in the 90s, they were still a bit like that. They were
but it's good, you know.
Yeah, but there's a conflict because the studios are expecting people to come out, like a lot of maybe the comics companies, maybe not as much, but you know, like for example, if you want to go and work for a superhero type of comic, you know, most of the thing you've been figuring that out yourself. So by the time you go and show your portfolio, you've already worked out how to draw those kind of characters. But if you're in animation college, let's say, and you want to go into something your own style, to be an auteur, you're going to do that anyway. But if you're struggling with this idea that I can only really draw the Disney kind of whatever that style is, and I'd love to do the auteur, that must be tough.
Yeah, well, definitely. You know, when I was at college, like there was, I mean, and it's not explicit, like, but there is like a sort of a focus on what's the industry standard. You know, and the industry standard is Pixar. You know, certain Cartoon Network shows. You know, not to detract from those. You know, there's plenty of people that want to do that thing, but you are sort of, you know, kind of shuffled in this, do this sort of thing, you know. Exactly, yeah. No, absolutely.
I mean, even the kind of Cal Arts style is even kind of encroaching. This was everywhere.
Exactly, yeah.
You know.
So I think like, I mean, having more of a, you know, a sort of out of left field, you know, showing you something that maybe you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to like read my Superman comics or whatever, you know, or someone's trying to like, you know, put something more esoteric, you know, weird in front of your face. Like I think that can be really beneficial. Like.
Completely.
Right, yeah.
95, it was before CG kicked in, Toy Story hadn't come out yet. And it was earlier than that, actually. And we had a studio in Dunleary, and we were doing a German feature film, which was in that kind of style as well, and that was the thing. And then Toy Story came out and kind of give 2D a kick in the head and killed it for a while, until the kind of more graphic stuff got more fashionable recently. But yeah, they didn't want to look at it.
Yeah, I think.
It becomes a kind of a cult.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think for me as well, like, I was like the focus in college is like, oh, I just need to get a job. You know what I mean? Like, you're just like so desperate. And that's kind of like the validation.
Yeah.
And so you wanna try and get good enough. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, especially like in this economy, it can be so hard to kind of battle
totally,
that feeling of, the general trend is.
But what's funny? Animation is the one thing that hasn't been hit by this economy.
To be fair, even like during COVID,
They
it's
can't get
gone up and
enough
everything.
material.
Yeah,
If you're
yeah.
good enough, or used to a particular studio's demands, you're going to work.
Yeah.
Because this idea of needing a degree, it's all good and whatever, but if you go in with every degree under the sun and you can't do what they ask you to do,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
that's what it is,
portfolio.
Yeah, even less about kind of skill, it's attitude. It's
Yeah, well, this is the thing that now, again, I have a bit of problems with my own personal. Don't tell me how to think.
Yeah.
And I don't really like pizza on Thursday. I don't want to go with the club going.
Sure, yeah.
That's where I probably am a loner, and I don't anymore suit the big studio thing.
Yeah.
And that's great if you like it. And I've worked in enough of the big ones to know it. Just didn't suit me. It's not wrong with it.
But it's kind of maintaining that work-life balance,
I'll tell you what's great about it is you get 2 years out of it. If you can go in for a couple of years, you've done it.
Yeah.
Go in for a couple of years, and that what you learn is it diligence? Is that the right word? You learn to stick at it, to stay at the desk, to show up on time, to be there, to be present.
Creates good habits.
And I feel like I don't feel like comics today.
Guilty.
You don't get it. Are you like that? Oh.
Let's be honest, yeah.
Throw out of that.
Yeah.
Leave that. When you
Amateurs.
leave it behind.
But it's always a struggle, but that is like, I think that one benefit of that sort of like factory system is I do just have to show up and get the work done, and so much of it is just about
Utter resilience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
You talk about advice, right, and what people might ask. Like nobody likes really getting advice, especially the ones that's uninvited. You always want some outfit.
Yeah.
But I had a couple of guys who were probably angry themselves. They were a lot older than me in the blue studio, and they probably didn't realise their dreams. They had worked in Disney and whatever, but they never got as far as they wanted to, or whatever it was.
Okay.
But it was interesting where they made me anyway, and a couple of other lads, and they realised, look, okay, this place is not perfect. And this could be any studio, it's not just on the Blues place, but any studio at any time, in any last 100 years. You have an opportunity to tap into something that you will never get. I mean, imagine, I can, back then I didn't even probably realise it. I was being taught by somebody who was taught by Milt Coireall.
Oh my God.
That's mental.
Yeah.
I worked with Richard Williams.
Wow, yeah.
Jeez.
No, I'm not going to name drop, but Milt Coireall taught him, and Richard Williams taught me. And back then I was like, yeah, well, all right, Dick, if that's what you want. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, everything he said is really amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh my
Gold,
God,
like,
his animator survival kit is just the Bible.
I worked on the desert sequences, mine and Thief in the Coffin, right? I did that.
Oh,
Wait, the
wow,
which?
jeez.
With all the guys in the desert. You know that, the brigand sequence? I did that. Most of it. And what was interesting doing that was, there was no backgrounds really, it was just the desert. And working with him, he was always about the character. He wouldn't storyboard.
Right.
Because he didn't want Warners to see.
Didn't want to get notes.
Comments,
Yeah.
Anyway, but I did find a story where he gave me these panels, it was brilliant, but I still have one or two somewhere. But the point I'm making anyway is when you work with these great people, or even, they don't have to be like the stars of the industry, but somebody who just knows a bit more than you, even if the job is not great, even if the billing drives you crazy.
Definitely,
crazy. They're going to tell you something you didn't know yesterday.
I mean, like whenever I was going around to comic book,
sorry, this would be comic book people as well, not just that.
Yeah, totally, yeah. But going around Comic-Cons and stuff, and like some of the best advice I got was from the older guys whose stuff I wouldn't really connect with, but I showed them my portfolio and they just gave me like fantastic advice, again, just about real foundational drawing stuff and working the perspective here and I mean, sometimes you go like, oh, whatever, but then you kind of go away and think about it and it's like, no, they're right, it's like.
But I suppose it depends on what, again, if it's a style, if you want to work on something that's a given style, like a house style, you're going to have to learn the backgrounds and all.
Yeah.
I'm not great with backgrounds, I'll be honest with you. I never took the time to draw buildings and I'm more into characters.
Yeah.
Doing animation, I think. Yeah. But, if you wanted to work on something, let's say you decided in a year from now, I really would love to do a Hellboy comic. And they're looking for an artist to do it.
Yep.
But you have to draw churches. So now you got to study it, you got to draw, and you maybe come up with your own I think the good thing about Hellboy, to use that as an example, is it's a lot more forgiving style-wise. They don't expect you to draw it, like, you know.
Yeah, no, I've heard Mike Mignola say that he doesn't like it,
You
yeah.
can take it somewhere else.
Yep.
But if you're going to draw Spider-Man, those skyscrapers better look like they are.
Yeah.
I even freak out thinking about drawing his costume.
Yeah.
No, I know why even like kids are able to do it. I just look at them drawing Spider-Man and I go, oh my god,
It's
how
hard.
long did you spend doing that costume? Yeah.
To me, it's admirable. It's insanity, but it's admirable.
But going back to like mentors again, mentioning Charlie Albo that time, and like he'd be laughing if I said this, but
He's going to hear it.
like, oh, he probably is, yeah. But like, you know, the revisions, I could get maybe 10 revisions on a page, and it was a trial by fire, but oh my god, I just learned everything about comics from doing that composition, like harmony, not only inside a panel, but across the entire page and across the entire comic.
But the difference I think there is that I had somebody telling you.
Yeah.
It's like we talked about that Marvel comic book earlier, how to draw a comic. That is just nothing like having somebody show you.
No.
Because it's specific, it's you know.
But it's that one-on-one, it's like learning the guitar, you know, you can watch YouTube and get pretty good, but sitting across from somebody, oh, you got to do this like that, oh yeah, sure, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So what then, based on all that, what would you say your influences would be in art? What would, like, if you had to pick a few artists or writers? So let's stay with artists. What would you say is an influence on you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like mentioned, like Mignola's definitely a huge one, you know. But it really is like so much. It's just like where do you start, you know? And it's constantly evolving and changing as well, you know.
And it's like, what do you consciously take and what do you unconsciously take as well?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, who would you like? We all like Hellboy, right? We all admire Mike Mignola. And I suppose I would count him as a bit of influence.
Yeah.
It's, but I also like the older Italian and French guys, like I was saying. But well, who would be your, like, if you hit it, like what I do sometimes, I hit a wall. To get through something. Who would be the guy? I'd go to Frank Frazetta sometimes.
Sure.
Or I might go to Bernie Wrightson, or I might go to some Japanese guy or whatever, Tezuka, because I want to do a particular. Do you have a go-to?
I actually tend to look a lot like black and white photography.
Okay.
Like Dan Arbus, like I'm a huge fan of Dan Arbus. A lot of the like Japanese street photographers. So yeah, just kind of picking up those influences, you know.
I find myself going back to Caravaggio and people like
Oh, brilliant, yeah.
because sometimes with the photographs, that's a really interesting thing you said that, because I use photographs for reference myself if I can't draw something, but if I want to figure out how to get something dynamic, I won't go looking for a photograph of a hand, because it's never pushed far enough.
Yeah.
You know, but
That high contrast, I mean, just does it for you basically. It's great, you know.
Yeah.
But mine too, I mean, I always have to remember I'm talking to different people. I'm not talking about the same people. But I always say Dave McKean and Art Spiegelman would just be my two go-to lads. I think I first encountered McKean's work when I was like really small. I'd say I was like 6, because he would have illustrated Varjak Paul. It was meant to be for kids, but
it's brilliant, isn't it?
You were talking about what you dip into when you're not feeling inspired. Like I'll just open. It's like the Bible. I just open a page and I go, oh yeah, okay, I'm good. That spoke to me.
It's interesting with influences and drawings. I mean, when I went to Bluth, I came out of school and there was two of us. My mate from Waterford, he's also doing animation now. He's more of a writer, a director now. But we were kind of good at drawing. We were known for being fellas in the school at that point.
Sure, yeah.
You were probably the same in your schools, and then next year there's going to be another young one or young fellas.
Yeah.
You know, we were our years good at drawing heads, you know.
It's like, you're arty, will you do this?
Yeah, you know, can you do some poster for the kid? No, I can't. But I could if you let me draw that. But I remember going up to Bluth and seeing the drawings on the wall and talking to them and just going, I can't draw. I can't do this. You know? So talking about influences, well, it is interesting because Robert Crumb was a huge influence on me when I was younger, right?
Yeah.
You look at all the old drawings I used to try and do before I got into animation. They were all that American Underground, Spiegelman.
Yeah.
And then all the years of animation and then going back to comics. And I realised I had no style of my own.
Oh.
That's mad.
I mean,
Well, I got it quick again, but it was just a matter of getting stuck in.
I mean, for all Crumb's flaws, at least he's got great line work.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Do you know what? I did my thesis on him for my final year.
Wow.
I wrote him, he wrote back.
Yeah, big kind of breadth of kind of genres and everything, like, you
It
know.
was amazing. I got a card from him saying I can't help you. I got a card from him.
sure, yeah.
But it is interesting talking about styles and influences, and I think it is in a way the project will also influence the style. The time you have to do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah,
if you have a
absolutely,
year or
yeah.
2 years, you can do whatever you can come.
Yeah.
But if you have a month or 6,
Yeah, if you have that
You're not going to be
deadline,
using
like,
0.1
No,
markers, you know, to be doing that. Yeah.
and talk about like
so I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks a million, lads. I've got a couple of more quick questions. What would you say you're optimistic about then for the future? And any tips for people who want to get into it from your perspective?
yeah, for the future, I guess like we were talking about earlier, definitely the new kind of modes of distribution and stuff. And there's a lot to be kind of apprehensive about as well. Like, I mean, comics are, you know, they kind of go in the way of the music industry in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, are we going to get like a Spotify for comics? You know.
I think it's here.
I'd love to make people
It's already,
Yeah.
Webtoon is very
Yeah.
much so, it's creating the assumption that this content is free, you know, when so much blood, sweat and tears goes into it.
Yeah, and you have like Marvel Unlimited and stuff as well,
Yeah.
like, you know, it's like those sort of subscription services, you know, and I think, but I mean, is that good, is it bad? It's kind of, you know, it's kind of yet to be determined, I think.
should not put you off though. I mean, like you were saying earlier, there was always problems. It's not, look, making a living drawing is mad anyway.
Yeah.
Expecting people to buy stuff you made up
Yeah.
is only of visual benefit. It doesn't get put heat in your house or whatever, you know what I mean? So to go into it is a big thing, a big selfish in a way thing, but that's not a bad thing. But I don't know, I'm always optimistic, I think. You know?
Oh yeah, I think you have to be, you know what I mean? Like,
And I mean, like, I did mention at the start of the interview, but like, I am a non-binary person, and you know, I didn't enter the industry identifying as such, and I was just amazed by even the doors it opened, like, you know, because I wasn't putting out things when I was going by my former name and things, but as soon as I started to kind of live like that, I realized I do want to put my work out there, and people want to see it, even if despite that. So I'm hoping like that more and more.
The one thing that I noticed, and I don't know about, I'm not going to get into all that stuff. I don't think race comes into it. I don't think any gender comes into it. If you have something people like, they're going to like it. And I think, you know, somebody hiring somebody because they're from Waterford, because Waterford people are the coolest people in the world at the moment, right? We're going to hire that guy because he's from Waterford. What are you talking about? Can you deliver? Can you come through? I think animation particularly, and I think comics might be the same, I hope so, although I think there's probably always an element of, you know,
I think identity like that is, yeah. I do think identity like that is very important now, though, because you know, you're getting so many different perspectives. I mean, I found especially with Bolger, it is about the lived experience of being non-binary, and I mean, I find that the main readership or the main people I'd be talking to about it that like really like it and they feel like it speaks to them are part of the queer community.
But my point is that the medium of comics is allowing you to do that.
Oh yeah, sure.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
The medium's open.
Yeah.
You know, whereas other mediums might not be as open.
Yeah.
So
Oh, absolutely.
if I want to rabbit on about something that I like, or I want to talk to other people who like things, comics allow you to do that because you can do them at home.
And it'll find people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're fine, and you can do it. And I think that's what people should be.
Oh, yeah.
On anything, I think the thing I would say, maybe you guys want to add to it, is you can do anything you want in comics.
Yeah.
Whereas other media doesn't necessarily allow you to do it.
For sure, yeah. And I think fundamentally what draws me to comics is that there's hardly any barrier between you and the person you're communicating with. You know, there's
So
such
much.
it's your mark on paper, and a person is connecting with that. You know, whether if you're doing film or other medium, it's less. So there's more barriers. You know.
It's stake in film.
Yeah.
With stakeholders.
And it's never going to be one person's voice with
Totally,
you know,
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
conversation.
So how do we sum it up then? Comics are one person's voice. They allow you to tell your story.
Yeah.
Or somebody else's story your way.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think it's just about communicating with people, you know, and finding people that you can connect with, you know.
Yeah.
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 Sounds great. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Cheers, Paul. Thanks.